The Cinecittà film studio buzzed with its usual energy that morning, but something felt different. Sophia Loren, the young woman from Pozzuoli with dreams larger than her circumstances, stood at the edge of the set. Across from her, Riccardo Castellani, the established star with a string of successful films, leaned against a camera with theatrical confidence. "Perhaps you should try the dramatic monologue," Riccardo said, his voice dripping with false encouragement. "Show everyone what you can do." The crew exchanged knowing glances. This scene was notoriously difficult, a test even for seasoned performers. And Sophia? She was still being dismissed as just another pretty face, someone who had gotten this far on looks rather than substance. "She'll never manage it," whispered the sound engineer. "Poor girl doesn't know what she's walking into," muttered the script supervisor. But Sophia didn't flinch. She had survived far worse than this man's condescension. To understand why Sophia responded the way she did, you need to know where she came from. Born Sophia Villani Ciccolone in 1934 in a charity ward for unwed mothers, Sophia's early life was defined by hardship that would have broken most people. She grew up in Pozzuoli, a small town near Naples, during some of Italy's darkest hours. Her mother, Romilda, had dreams of becoming an actress, but instead raised her daughters alone, unmarried and struggling. There was no father present, at least not one who acknowledged them. During World War II, young Sophia experienced bombing raids that forced her family to take shelter in railway tunnels. She knew hunger intimately, not the fashionable dieting of film stars, but the gnawing emptiness of real poverty. She grew up tall and thin, mocked by other children who called her a toothpick. These experiences forged something unbreakable within her. While Riccardo Castellani had grown up in comfort with family connections, smoothing his path to stardom, Sophia had clawed her way forward through sheer determination. Have you ever been told you weren't good enough by someone who never had to fight for anything? Sophia knew that feeling well. Riccardo Castellani represented everything the old Italian cinema establishment valued: proper family, classical training, connections to producers and directors. He had cultivated an image of sophistication, but beneath it lay insecurity masked by arrogance. When he learned that this girl from Naples, this Sophia Ciccolone, who had reinvented herself as Sophia Loren, had been cast in a significant role in his latest production, he saw an opportunity for entertainment at her expense. Riccardo had done this before. There was a pattern. Identify the newcomer, especially one from humble origins, and subtly undermine them. It maintained the hierarchy, reminded everyone of their place. From the first rehearsal, Riccardo made his opinions clear. He questioned Sophia's technique. He suggested her casting was based on physical appearance rather than ability. He never said these things directly to her. He was too clever for that, but always loud enough for her to hear. "She's got the look," he'd say to the cinematographer, "but can she actually act?" Sophia absorbed these comments with outward calm. She didn't complain to the director. She didn't create drama. Instead, she showed up each day, prepared, professional, and increasingly observant. What Riccardo didn't realize was that Sophia was studying everything: his techniques, his weaknesses, the moments when his performance became mechanical. And she practiced relentlessly, driven by the same hunger that had pushed her from poverty toward something better. The production had been underway for 3 weeks when Riccardo conceived his plan. There was a scene in the film, a long, emotionally complex sequence that required both technical precision and raw emotional truth. It was the kind of scene that separated real actors from pretenders. Riccardo had rehearsed it extensively. The director had praised his interpretation. Everyone agreed it was the centerpiece of the film. That's when Riccardo had his idea. Why not invite Sophia to attempt this scene? Frame it as friendly encouragement, an opportunity for the newcomer to learn. When she failed, as she surely would, it would confirm everyone's suspicions about her limited abilities. He chose a day when several producers were visiting the set. The audience for Sophia's humiliation would include people who could affect her future in the industry. Ricardo approached her with calculated casualness. "You should try the Villa Borghese scene," he suggested, referring to the emotional sequence everyone considered so challenging. "Good practice for you. Don't worry if you can't manage it. It's quite difficult." The set fell quiet. Everyone understood what was happening, even if protocol prevented them from acknowledging it openly. What would you do if someone set you up to fail in front of an audience? Remember that feeling as we continue. Sophia looked at Ricardo for a long moment. Her expression revealed nothing, not fear, not anger, not even determination. Just calm assessment. Then she nodded and walked to the performance area. The crew exchanged glances. Was she really going to attempt this? Did she not understand the trap? The director, intrigued despite himself, called for the cameras to roll. Perhaps this would at least be instructive, a demonstration of what not to do. Sophia took her position. The lights focused on her. She closed her eyes briefly, centered herself, and began. What happened next stunned everyone present. Sophia didn't just perform the scene. She transformed it. Every gesture carried weight and authenticity. Her face conveyed emotions that scripts could barely capture. She moved through the sequence with natural grace, drawing on depths of real experience that Ricardo's privileged background had never provided him access to. The scene lasted 4.5 minutes. During that time, the set fell into complete silence. Crew members who had been adjusting equipment stopped mid-motion. The visiting producers leaned forward in their chairs. When Sophia finished, the silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then the director stood slowly, his expression one of genuine shock. He turned to his assistant director and said quietly, but not so quietly that others couldn't hear, "We need to talk about restructuring this film." The consequences unfolded rapidly. Emergency meetings were called. Footage was reviewed repeatedly. The consensus was undeniable. They had discovered something special. Within days, the script was being reconsidered. Sophia's role expanded. Scenes were added. The film's focus began shifting from Ricardo's character toward a more balanced ensemble, with Sophia increasingly at its center. Ricardo watched his dominance crumble. His complaints about script changes were dismissed. His demands for rewrites were rejected. The deference that had always been granted him suddenly evaporated. The crew, who had long tolerated Ricardo's condescension toward them, now found their patience exhausted. The producers, who had once catered to his preferences, now saw him as one actor among several, and a difficult one at that. 3 weeks after Sophia's breakthrough performance, tensions reached their breaking point. Ricardo arrived late to set yet again and began berating a young assistant for a minor error. Sophia quietly intervened. She didn't raise her voice or make accusations. She simply suggested that perhaps patience was more productive than criticism. Ricardo turned his anger on her, launching into a tirade about manipulation and questioning her methods. He suggested she had used her feminine appeal rather than genuine talent. Sophia listened without interrupting. When Ricardo finally exhausted himself, she simply nodded and returned to preparing for her scene. But 2 producers had witnessed the entire exchange. The meeting that determined Ricardo Castellani's fate happened 2 days later. The producers weighed his star power against the disruption he was causing. In a changing industry that increasingly valued professionalism over aristocratic pedigree, the decision came surprisingly quickly. Ricardo was removed from the production. His role would be recast. The news was delivered by a studio lawyer, the ultimate indignity for someone who had considered himself untouchable. Word spread quickly through the Italian film industry. Ricardo's career never recovered. The family connections that had once opened doors suddenly proved powerless. Within a few years, he'd faded into obscurity. Meanwhile, the completed film showcased Sophia Loren's remarkable talent. Critics called her a revelation. More importantly, serious directors began to see her not as a beautiful woman who could sometimes act, but as a genuine artist. Sophia's career soared. She worked with Vittorio De Sica, creating performances of extraordinary depth. She conquered Hollywood without sacrificing her Italian identity. She won the Academy Award, becoming the first actress to win for a foreign language performance. But success never changed her essential character. She remained grounded, remembering always where she had come from, the poverty, the struggles, the people who had doubted her. Years later, when asked about that pivotal day on set, Sophia reflected on what had given her the courage to face Ricardo's trap. She explained that growing up with nothing had taught her something valuable. When you've survived real hardship, the petty cruelties of insecure men lose their power to intimidate you. She had learned that the best response to those who underestimate you is not anger or argument, but simply demonstrating what you're truly capable of. Riccardo Castellani thought he was setting up a joke at a newcomer's expense. Instead, he created the moment that launched one of cinema's most enduring legends. His attempt to humiliate Sophia Loren became the catalyst for his own downfall and her ascent. The story reminds us that how we treat others, especially those we consider beneath us, reveals our true character far more than our successes ever could. Talent, determination, and grace will ultimately triumph over arrogance and cruelty. Sophia Loren rose from poverty to become not just a great actress, but an icon of strength, dignity, and authenticity. She proved that where you come from matters less than where you're determined to go. And perhaps that's the most satisfying ending of all, not revenge, but the simple reality that kindness and talent will always outlast cruelty and entitlement. If this story resonated with you, consider what it teaches about resilience, dignity, and the power of proving doubters wrong through excellence rather than confrontation.